This video is the part 1 recording of the live session entitled Don't Lose the Easy Marks by Sheila William. The PASS ACCA AAA series is brought to you by Sheila William. She has been teaching ACCA for the past 30 years. She has helped thousands of students pass the challenging ACCA papers.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the final wrap up. We've got 7 days to go. Now let's just quickly go through some of the topics that are 100% sure to come out. And the ones that are 100% sure to come out are the ones that are colored in yellow. So going into the exam, you need to absolutely know how to handle audit risk questions, ROMM questions, audit procedure questions. In fact, audit procedure questions, they are very closely linked to matters and evidence questions as well, because under the evidence part, the examiner allows you to write down the procedures, write down the evidence using the syntax or the language of audit procedure. So that's not a problem there at all. And you've got ethical threats coming out in question 1. So these areas that are 100% sure to come out are found in question 1. Now, this ethics part here may not come out here, but if it does not come out here, then it'll come out either here or here. Okay, so whatever it is sure to come out. By the way, those of you who might find that this area here a bit difficult to take down because there's a lot of stuff inside here, I will post them in the chat group. So all you have to do is get in touch with me and I will put you into the chat group. Okay, and I will only do the posting tomorrow morning. So if you get into the chat group tonight, you'll be able to see all of this within the chat group itself. All right, so all those areas are 100% sure to come out will be these areas. So you need to make sure that you understand the basics of it and you understand how to find the points in the scenario for it, and also that you understand how to write out the answer as well, which we'll be very quickly revising today. All right, now, what are those areas that are highly probable to come out? Again, I will just copy this onto the chat group. Yeah, highly probable will be business risk. The thing here is this: there are about 5 papers that will be used for this whole exam, meaning that the examiner has got maybe 3 types of question 1s and 5 types of section B questions. So I really don't know who is going to get which type of question 1 and which of the section B questions. So I'm just saying it's highly probable some people might get the business risk question, some people may not get the business risk question. So these are some of those areas: matters in evidence, sufficiency of evidence, quality control, evaluating the work of the component auditor. We've got NOCLA, money laundering, acceptance, and lots of finalization areas. Now, going back to the first diagram here, finalization, the examiner has already promised us that 25 marks will come from here. The only problem is that, just give me a minute. The only problem is that we have no idea as to which one of these 7 topics are going to come out. We've got procedures to completion, we've got implications for the auditor's report, we've got going concern, critical appraisal, matters in evidence, matters to discuss with management, matters to communicate with those charged with governance. These all come under the finalization area. So I am really not sure as to who would be getting which one of these questions, but whatever it is, 25 marks is definite, but then we don't know who is going to get which question. All right. Now, under the implications for the auditor's report here, I put a little acronym there, and this is the exam technique that I use. All right. So for those of you who are not so familiar, the N here speaks about the nature of the modification. Nature of the modification means that it could either be a limitation of scope or it could be a misstatement. All right, so nature means we have to first of all derive our judgment on whether derive the judgment whether it is a misstatement or a limitation of scope. Okay, we've got a Rashid here. Hi, Rashid. Your microphone is on. I think there's a little bit of a feedback here. Yeah, so just turn the microphone off. Thank you. Okay, great. So where was I just now? Okay, on the NSOB. So NSOB is actually an exam technique. Okay. And moving on to severity here, S stands for severity. And severity is to do with two things. One is whether it is material, and the other one is whether it is pervasive. And I'll run through that very quickly with you because it seems to be an area that the examiner keeps complaining about, that students have got some misunderstanding. Okay, then we're going to go on to the opinion. So once you know the material, once you know the nature and the severity, that would lead us to the opinion. That would lead us to the opinion. And from the opinion, if the examiner says, okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Are we all right? I think I managed to mute that. Okay. Then moving on to the last part would be the basis paragraph. So if the exam question says implications for the auditor's report, let me just use another color here, report, then you would bring in the basis paragraph as well. If the examiner says implications for the auditor's opinion, then you just leave out the part relating to the basis paragraph because the examiner wants you to stop at the opinion part. Okay, but whatever it is, this is the exam technique for implications for the auditor's report. Usually there'll be 5 marks given inside here. Are we good? Now, critical appraisal of the auditor's report requires an exam technique, and I'm sure you already have gone through those questions. We really don't have time to revise that because it really takes a long time. Okay, so I'm sure you already know that. Matters to discuss with management hasn't come up for a while, so please make sure that you know how to deal with that. Remember that your aim in this section here under matters to discuss with management, here, the aim here is to convince management to adjust, to put through the adjustment. That's the main thing. All right, to convince them to put through the adjustment. And in order to convince them to put through the adjustment, this is what you need to talk to them about. Okay, the first one is you need to explain the accounting standard, because you might be saying, please put through the adjustment, but if there's no basis for that, he's not going to listen to you. So you're going to say that this standard says that, you better listen. Okay. And then you need to explain to him the impact on the financial statements, which means that you'll have to explain to him the adjustments, the double entry, what he needs to do. It could be a double entry, or maybe if it is a notes to the notes that need to be disclosed, then you need to explain to him what kind of disclosures that would be necessary. All right. Then in order to convince him even further, it's so important for you to show the materiality of it. All right. Now, when you're doing this part here, now let me just put another M here. Okay. When you're doing this part here, can you see that there's an adjustment there? Adjustment means you're going to debit something and you're going to credit something, right? So then you've got to consider the materiality of the debit entry and the materiality of the credit entry as well. So there will be two calculations for the materiality here in order for you to convince management. Normally, when we are doing any other area of the syllabus, we only calculate one materiality, but here you are talking to the client and you're trying to convince him that it is material and therefore he needs to put through the adjustment. Then after that, you need to, this M here is more of management should be encouraged to put through the adjustment. Why? Because if he doesn't, it will be considered to be a violation of an accounting standard. here. And of course, it is also material. Sometimes in the exam question, they will ask you the implications for the opinion. Then you're going to put down the opinion inside there. So depending on how many marks the examiner is giving you, this would be your exam technique. We are thinking about AAMM. And if the exam question asks you to go into the opinion, then only put down the opinion. Don't have to put down the wording, just the opinion. And you're going to say that if this adjustment is not put through, the opinion will be qualified except for seeing that the financial statements are materially misstated due to non-compliance of the accounting standard. All right, so I repeat, we've got, first of all, the accounting treatment. Let me just color that in blue. And then after that, you've got the adjustment, the double entry as a result of that non-compliance, and the materiality of the debit entry and the materiality of the credit entry. And then we're going to encourage management. Management should be encouraged to put through the adjustment because this is a violation of a standard. Okay. Right, so the O1 here really depends on the examiner, whether the examiner puts it in a requirement for the opinion or not. Matters to discuss with, matters to communicate with those charged with governance is really very, very important. And by now you should already know that there's several standards involved inside here. We've got ISA 240, we've got ISA 250, you've got ISA 260, and you've got 265. And you've got 705 as well. Now, the thing when it comes to ISA 260, the thing that you should watch out for are the specific words inside there, like significant finding, yeah, or you have got significant difficulty. When you come to 265 on the area of the management letter, for those charged with governance, it would be the area of significant deficiency. Okay, now other areas where there would be communication is also under the area of ISA 600 on the area of group audits. Now, sorry, I went through the numbers. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the numbers or not. 240 is on fraud. Okay, so if you happen to find fraud during the audit, you have to inform those charged with governance and make sure that they understand the seriousness of the matter. And ISA 250 is on NOCLA. Again, if you find NOCLA, you need to communicate with those charged with governance to make sure that they understand the seriousness of the matter as well, because if you break the law, your license could also be revoked and there could be huge penalties as well. All right, so under 260, we're thinking of these words: significant finding, significant difficulties. All right. And under 265, we're thinking about significant deficiency. So make sure that you revise these standards as well. 705 is on the area of modification. So before you modify the audit report, you need to communicate that with them. And on the area of ISA 600, like for example, if the component auditor is not sharing his audit working papers with you, then you can complain to those charged with governance of the group company, the holding company, the parent company. Yeah. Now, there are two articles here that you need to make sure that you have a look at. Yeah. And if you're not sure as to these two articles, you can always go and have a look at my video in my YouTube channel. On the iceberg code. On the iceberg code, the part here is the part about the skepticism. All right. Traditionally, the skepticism, if you look at the definition of the skepticism, okay, sorry, before that, I've got a question here from David. Does bribery come under NOCLA? Yes. So that will be coming under anti-bribery laws. All right. Now, speaking about bribery, let me just remind you that under the anti-bribery laws, it is not only the company that will be found guilty if they, let's say, pay a bribe, but any agent used by the company would also be guilty of that crime. So let's say you're a company and you are shipping your stuff using an agent. Of course, when we do shipping, we always use an agent. I mean, we don't have ships of our own. So we make use of an agent to move the goods into the ship and then to take responsibility on the other side when it docks on the other side to make sure that it goes to the custom clearance and all that. So we are always using our agents, our shipping agents. So if the shipping agent pays the bribe, it will be seen like the client company is paying the bribe. So it doesn't matter who is paying the bribe, as long as it's to do with your business, then you would be found guilty. So please take note of that. All right, thanks, David. So you've got these two articles here. And on the exposure draft here, there are two areas that you need to watch out for. The first area is the area relating to skepticism. And skepticism here, traditionally, skepticism is something that is linked to auditors, because if you look at the definition, what is the definition of skepticism? It is having... You can't hear me, James? Can everybody else hear me? Yes. Okay, so James, you might be having problems on your side. Everybody else can hear me. Okay, thank you, guys. All right, so the definition of skepticism is having a questioning mind, okay? Being alert to circumstances that might indicate the possibility of fraud or error. And a critical assessment of evidence. So whenever you talk about evidence, we are linking that to the auditor. So the new exposure draft is saying that all accountants need to be skeptical as well. All right, so just keep that in mind. The other thing here inside the standard, he has unmuted. Okay, all right. Give me a minute. Rashid, you need to keep your microphone muted, yeah? Okay, because there's a little bit of feedback. Sorry, guys. Okay, all right. Maybe his kid is near him. Rashid has got two little boys, so maybe they're messing around near his computer. Okay, so coming back here. Oh, just now it was too loud. Okay, thanks, Dinesh. All right, so Rashid has got two boys. He's from Pakistan and he's got two little boys. Okay, so coming back here. So that's one part about the skepticism. All right. Now, another part of this iceberg exposure draft that you need to watch out for is this thing called bias. Okay. This bias is not management bias. This is the bias that is faced by the accountant or the auditor in this case. All right. So we're not talking about management bias now. Management bias is covered under ISO 240 on the area of fraud. Here we're talking about we are biased. Okay. So there are a few areas inside there. So please make sure that you have a look at that video as well. I've also got a video on my YouTube channel. All right. Dinesh is saying, can you please repeat? I'm not sure. Dinesh, which area is that? QBC. Okay. So QBC is the definition that we find that I'm sure you already know of, the definition, having a questioning mind. Yeah, this is an audit definition of skepticism, being alert to circumstances that might indicate the possibility of fraud or error, and a critical assessment of any kind of audit evidence that the client gives you. All right, so this definition here is to do with the auditor. Okay, and the iceberg code saying that skepticism should not just be limited to auditors, it should also be applied by the rest of the accountants who are not in the audit field. Now, the area that we need to concern about here is the word bias. So you might get an 8 marker for bias. So far, that has not come out. So how does that come in? You know, in our syllabus, we've got this thing about data analytics, right? Okay, data analytics. So here we have got something called automation bias. Skepticism appears in question 1 under planning. question one will be the normal questions inside there. You've got the business risk, you've got the audit risk. Yeah. It might include skepticism inside there, but again, we are going to follow that. Okay, so I'm just talking about the exposure draft now. The exposure draft will probably come under section B for about 8 marks. Okay, now one of the biases there is called automation bias. Automation bias is that the auditor swallows everything that comes out of the computer. If it comes out of the computer, fine, I believe it. All right. And for the auditors, the area that we are most concerned about is the area relating to data analytics. So data analytics is like a servant. It's a tool that we use. It is not to be used as overriding our skepticism. So whatever results that come out for the data analytics, I know it's from the computer. I know your software is really high level and pretty sophisticated, but iceberg code is saying, hang on, just look at the figures to see if it makes sense. Yes, the software does give you that data. Yes, it is a sophisticated software, but the standard, the exposure drive is saying, just hang on, just take a second look at it. Does it make sense? Don't straight away rely 100% on it. We're not saying don't rely on it. The standard is just saying that just think twice about it. Don't just swallow everything that the data analytics software throws out at you. That's what it says. All right. Now you've got other areas inside here. There are 8 areas of bias. Please have a look at that by yourself. All right. Okay, moving on, you've got the ISA 315 revised here. That could also come out as an 8 marker inside there. And the main things, well, we don't have time to go inside there. Please go and have a look at my video under my YouTube channel. All right, data analytics. Now, everyone is so, so afraid that data analytics might come out. So what is data analytics? Data analytics is just very, very sophisticated audit software. All right. Now, how is it going to be used within our exam? It's going to be like this. Traditionally, maybe before 2021, when we had question 1, so sometimes the examiner would say to explain the audit risk, maybe that will be A part 1 of the question. All right, A part 1 of the question. And then after that, there'll be A part 2 of the question, which says, what is the additional information that you will need as an auditor? So let me give you an example. So supposing the question 1 is to do with foreign purchases. Okay, so when it comes to foreign purchases, then your purchases are going to be in foreign currency, right? So the accounting treatment here would have to follow IAS 21, where we're saying that we're going to use a spot rate, but if the exchange rate does not fluctuate significantly, then we can use an average rate. So the additional information that you would want would be to find out the rates throughout the year, because you want to find out whether the client can use an average rate or not. Yeah, so that one is additional information. But the only thing is that this additional information is from outside the company. It's not from within the client's database. It is from outside the company, external information. All right. Now, some of that information might also be from within. So you've got external information. Let me just write that down very quickly. External information, like the case of foreign exchange rates. But you could also have internal information. Like those of you who have done the crux question, it was to do with a shipping company or cruise or holiday cruises, I think it was. And the data analytics there, one of the things there was to provide data as to when the cruises began, the date it begins, and the date it ends, because we're very worried about the revenue recognition part at the year end itself. So there are some cruises that might start before the year end and end after the year end. So we want data analytics to take a picture of the cruises that cross over the year-end date. All right. So that one is internal information. So this internal information, if it comes out in your exam now, can easily be obtained if you're using data analytics software. So data analytics software is not so much for the external information. It's more for the internal information that is within the client's database itself. Now, if the client's database has got external information, fine. Your audit data analytics can arrange that in the form of a dashboard for you as well. So the thing here is whether that information is inside the client's database. Anything that is inside the client's database, your audit data analytics software can arrange it or rearrange it for you in the form of a dashboard. But if the data is outside and not inside the client's database, then there's nothing that your data analytics can do. All right. So if you really think about it, the data analytics question, in a sense, is very similar to what we had in the past when the exam question asked you the additional information that you want. So the additional information that you want, like in the crux question, would be the dates where the cruises begin and the dates that the cruises end, especially those cruises that cross over the year-end date. So we previously would have done it manually. Now with data analytics, it can go in there and extract that data for us. So if you look at it, the data analytics question and the additional information question are really very, very similar. Okay, so don't get afraid if you see a data analytics question. Just think additional information. That's what we want. The data analytics will go inside there and take that information and arrange it in a manner that would provide you with value-added information. Are we okay? So don't get afraid if you see data analytics. Now, going on to the questions that are possible to come out, we've got the reliability of the component auditor that hasn't come up for a very long time. So please make sure that you know your ISO 600, and there are 5 points inside here. Now, for my students, I have arranged it in the form of an acronym. I love acronyms, okay? And the acronym here is EQEAM. You might have something else. I'm sure you know all the points already, so don't worry too much about the acronym. So the first one is whether the component auditor has got experience in IFRSs. Yeah. Number 2, Q is whether they're qualified and licensed. E is whether they follow the ISBA ethical code. A is the auditing standards. And M is whether they operate in a jurisdiction that regularly monitors the audit firm. So I'm sure you already know that. So don't worry about the acronym that I'm using. All right. This acronym is the stuff that I use for my students within my class itself. All right. So don't worry about it. I'm sure you know that. And that one can come out and that'll be 5 marks. So make sure that you know that. Another area that you need to know is how do you assess the reliability of the internal auditor before you rely on them? And again, ISO 610, I'm sure you already know it. The only difference here is that I've arranged it in the form of an acronym. So don't worry too much about it. I'm sure you already know it. Okay, so don't worry. So the first one is due professional care, whether they plan their work, the internal auditors, whether they've got proper quality control. And the second one is organizational status, whether they report to the audit committee, make sure that they don't report to the finance director, and technical competence, whether they are qualified as internal auditors. And the other one is, so this one is the scope of their work. So this first 3 here are to do with the person of the auditor. Yeah, the scope of the work is the work that they do. So make sure that there's an overlap in the work. Make sure it's work that we can rely on. If the internal auditors are only doing value added, they're only doing work that is specific to internal audit alone, all right, like value for money audits, for example, then we might not be able to use that because it's nothing to do with true and fair, right? Then we're going on to the auditor expert here. So I mean, at this stage, we've got 7 days left. I'm sure you know how to assess the reliability of the person just put a person down here. Okay. That's a person here. And this one is on the area of the work. Okay. So now if you want to assess the reliability of the auditor expert, then what are the areas that you would have to consider? We want to consider their competence, yeah, their capability, and their objectivity. That one is to do with the person. So it doesn't matter whether it's an auditor expert or management expert, it would be the same thing, all right? But when you're dealing with their work, then there are two subheadings that you must be familiar with. The first subheading that you must know is the nature and the scope of their work. Make sure that they are following the auditor's instructions in our letter to them. And the second area is the area of the relevance of conclusion. All right, so those are the two areas. Now, relevance of conclusion, it really depends on the topic that is inside the exam question. So you will have to go back to your notes. So some of the areas that are normally used, if there's a mathematical formula, model, or a method, then we would like to consider that. We would like to look at the assumptions used. We would look to see whether the data used in the expert's working paper, whether it is reliable or not. And we would like to see whether there are any subsequent events that can confirm their figure. We can also recalculate some of the stuff. All right. Now, don't worry too much about the acronyms and all of that. I'm sure by now you are already familiar with all of them. It's just that this is the acronyms that I use with my students. That's all. All right. Now, on the area, management expert is the same as the auditor expert. The only difference is that if it is a management expert, we would leave this out. Can you see the C here? Capability, we would leave that out. Why? Because the work would have already been done. So you don't have to worry about whether they are available or not. But if the work has not yet been done, even if it's a management expert, then you still have to use CCO. Yeah, the only difference here is that if you're talking about auditor expert, it comes under ISO 620, it's CCO, and if it's management expert, it comes under ISO 500 on audit evidence, and it's still CCO. All right. Okay, so moving on to the service organization, that could also come up. Please have a look at that. But I just want to highlight something to you. This ISO 402 is only on tests of control, because if the processing is done by the service organization, then you may not have access to the internal controls itself. Yeah. So ISO 402 is only on the area of test of control. Please take note that ISO 402 has got nothing to do with substantive procedure. Substantive procedures are to be carried out by the external auditor, and we cannot rely on a type 1 or type 2 report. There's no such thing. Type 1, type 2 is only for test of control. It's not for substantive procedures. So for substantive procedures, we need to see where the documents are. And if the documents are in the outsourced provider, and if they don't give us access, then that will amount to a limitation of scope. All right. The initial engagement, some students had this last round in their question 1. What are the additional matters to consider if it is an initial engagement? So what are the usual matters, whether it's been correctly brought down, whether the opening balances are misstated, and whether the accounting policies are consistent. So some people had that. You can still have that. So please just have a look at that. Yeah. Advertisements, some people had it last round. Yeah, not everybody. Tender document, nobody has had it for quite a while. So make sure that you revise your notes to see what they are. Okay. All right. So now, what are we looking at today, actually? So today, these are some of the areas that we're going to be looking at just very, very quickly. All right. Sleep, time management in the exam, dating convention, professional marks, easy marks, exam technique, time savers in the exam. My mind has gone blank. What do I do? Dealing with exam anxiety. Okay, so let's just go through them very quickly. So the first one is on the area of sleep. Now, let me explain. For success in the AAA exam, we need 3 basic elements. This box here is to do with the knowledge aspect of things. Knowledge, understanding, remembering, which you should have already done by now. I mean, there's 7 days to the exam. Don't tell me you've not done this. It'll be an absolute disaster. Okay, so I'm sure you've done that. So knowing it, understanding how it applies, as well as remembering the knowledge. So for remembering, I use a lot of these acronyms here because it helps my students just get the information at their fingertips. So you would have used some methods, or maybe you just have a perfect memory. I don't know, but I love acronyms and pictures. Okay, so there are 3 things inside here, and I'm sure you would have already done this part here relating to the exam technique, the question practice. But this area, I'm not so sure whether you guys have done anything about it or not. I find that generally, the only time students practice time management is on the day of the exam itself. True or false? Can I get some feedback from you? Have you been practicing time management? Can you say yes, no, true? Okay, you need to do something about that before the date of the exam. So with my students in the boot camp, they've had 3 mock exams, and the progress test all invigilated. So I'm sitting there. I know it gives them extra pressure knowing that I'm watching them, but I want them to do that. And when the time is up, I have to tell them, oi, time's up, because they will not stop on their own. So you need to make sure that you practice that, because otherwise you tend to write too much. Yeah, so please practice that. It's so important. Now, the third element is called sleep. Can you imagine? And I put that right on top. So at the beginning of the semester, we're not so concerned about that. At the beginning of the semester, we're more interested about the knowledge, the exam techniques, and all of that. But now it's 7 days before the exam. Let me explain why sleep is important. All right. Now, in order to explain that, let me first of all explain the type of exam questions that we have. You can recognize all of them. Evaluate business risk, evaluate audit risk, design audit procedure, comment on the matters to consider, and explain the evidence, evaluate implications for audit report. The questions are the same all the time. So we're not so concerned about the questions, but you know what we're concerned about? The words in the scenario. They are always different. Okay, now I have taught AA. I've taught paper P1, before SBL, we had the paper P1, and I'm still teaching AAA. And I find that having adequate night sleep is the most important for AAA. It doesn't affect the AA students so much. It didn't affect the P1 students so much. But you know what? It was absolutely disastrous for AAA. Let me explain. So this one was from 2 semesters ago, where I had these 3 guys. Okay. What was it? 2 semesters ago? I can't remember now. It was at the time where they used to do their answers in their handwriting. Yeah, they still used a pen for the exam. This is just before the CBE, the last sitting. So they've been doing all the assignments and the progress tests in the mock exam 1 and 2. And their marks were really very good. These 3 guys were consistently doing good work. And when they came to mock 1 and mock 2, I could already see that their marks are already on an upward trajectory, which is really very good. That means they're moving from 60 marks to 70 marks. And then when it came to mock 3, I thought they would get 80 marks. But you know what? They got all 3 of them 30 plus marks. And I was shocked. And this time, I can see their handwriting, and I know that these are the guys. I mean, I know their handwriting. I've been marking their assignments and their progress tests. I know their handwriting, and these are those guys. Okay, so Christine, you can't hear me. Yeah, thank you, Shafika. So you might need to go out and come back in again because everybody else can hear me. All right. So these three guys, they are smart guys and they have been getting very good marks, very consistent work. And how did mock 3 become 30 marks? So when I talked to them, they said it was a good paper. Can you imagine? They can tell me it was a good paper. Mock 3 was good. I know what was going on. I wrote the right thing. How can you give me 30 marks? Has this ever happened to you in the exam? Or maybe you've heard your friends who come out of the exam saying that the AAA paper was fantastic. I could do everything. And then when the marks come out, it was an absolute disaster. Have you heard of that? Can you type into the chat whether it's happened to you or happened to your friends? Have you heard of that? That it's such a shocker. Only for AAA. It's amazing. So the thing here is that when you don't have enough sleep, somehow your eyes cannot see the right thing. Now, because the questions are standard, we know what the question is about. But the words in the scenario are always different. And so if your stress level is high and you don't have enough sleep, your brain will automatically try and reduce the stress. Let me explain it this way. Supposing you got invited to a party, okay? And you go to the party and you open the door, yeah, you ring the bell and they open the door and you look at everyone inside there. There's so many people there at the party. Of course, this is before the COVID. Now we can't have parties like that anymore, okay? So, when the door opens, you see everyone is a stranger and your eyes is just looking. You're not even looking at the stranger. You generally know that they are strangers, but your eyes are looking for a friend. And when you see the friend, what do? You move towards that friend. You don't move towards a stranger. You move towards a friend. And that's exactly the same as what happens in the exam. So if you don't have enough sleep, your stress level is high. When your stress level is high, your brain will automatically want to bring the stress level down by only looking at the words that you recognize. So in that scenario, there might be words that you've seen in another exam question, and straight away your eyes will go there. And then when you start answering it, the answer would be based on another exam question, which the examiner has been complaining about. The examiner says that there have been a significant minority. I'm not sure what that means. Significant means a lot. Minority means not so much, but it's significant enough for the examiner to put it down. So why do students use another answer? Because the mind is just dealing with the stress. So in order for you to manage that stress level, you need to have enough rest. You need to have enough sleep within the next 7 days. Now, it doesn't matter whether you've studied or not studied. There's no point that you burn the midnight oil, that you cut down on your sleep and you're sleeping at 3 hours a day and fail the exam. What's the point? We want to pass the exam. All right. So now what you need to do is you need to have enough sleep so that when you see the paper, you would be able to see every single word in the scenario. Then you'll be able to respond appropriately. So for this next 7 days, excuse me, for the next 7 days, please make sure that you get at least 7 or 8 hours sleep. If you, it's not too much. Make sure that you manage your time during the day as well. All right, don't waste your time during the day, but make sure that you get 7 or 8 hours sleep. Remember the story with my 3 students that I thought they were going to get 80 marks for mock 3 and they got 30. And the reason for that was just lack of sleep. And when I asked them, they said the paper was easy. Mock 3 was easy. How is it possible that mock 3 is easy and you get 30 marks? I can understand if you had said that mock 3 was difficult and then you got 30 marks, I can understand. How can mock 3 be easy and you get 30 marks? So can you see how your brain just doesn't want to work with you? So in order to make sure that that doesn't happen to you in the exam, please make sure that you get enough sleep. Why does it only happen here to AAA? One of the reasons probably is because these papers, first two papers are easier for one thing. And secondly, is that the stakes are not so high. People who are doing AAA are usually at the final stage where it's the last paper that they need to pass before they graduate. And therefore the stress level is so high. And if you compare these two here and the AAA here, when they were doing AA and P1, they were probably not married, didn't have kids, and they probably did not get promoted so high in their work. But now when they come to AAA, they've got so much responsibility at work, and they probably have got a couple of extra kids as well. And the stress level is so high. So in order to make sure that you manage that, to bring down your stress level, you really must have enough sleep. So can you imagine? It is so important. I mean, if you look at my diagram here, to pass AAA, you need all three. Please take me seriously. All right. And please make sure that you have at least 7 hours sleep from now until the date of the exam. Don't sabotage yourself. All right. Okay. The next one we're looking at is time management. So much for sleep. All right. If you have got insomnia and you can't fall asleep, you need to Google to find out how you can overcome that. All right. We're not dealing with that here. So the second area that we're really concerned about is the area relating to time management. Okay. No, please, no sleeping pill. But if you find that you find difficulty of sleeping, then go and get your audit notes, you know, your AAA notes, yeah, and read that. I'm sure you'll fall asleep within 5 minutes. All right. Please do not take any sleeping pills. Yeah, that's not good because it interferes with the brain. All right. So don't do that. So time management in the exam. I'm sure you're already familiar with this time management. Question 1 is 50 marks. You have got 1 hour, 45 minutes to complete it. Okay, question 2, question 3, you've got 45 minutes. So please make sure that you divide your time in the exam between reading and building your answer time, because you know now you've got CBE exams, you can actually copy paste, do your framework, everything nicely. So make sure that you do that within that reading and building time. So here I've given you, multiply that by 0.3, then your writing time would be multiplied by 1.5. Okay, so I've put a little note down here that says, regardless of how hard you study and how hard you practice, without the discipline of time management, it's game over. Don't have to wait for the results to come out. It's game over. Okay, so in the 7 days, if you're practicing questions, simultaneously practice with the timer as well. Please make sure that you practice on the CBE platform so that you're familiar with moving between the exhibits and familiarize yourself with the icons and all that. Right? The next one is on the area of dating convention. Now, this seems to be a bit of a problem, the examiner says in the examiner's report. So let me explain. The dating convention that we're using now is 1 July. All right, meaning that it does not matter whether you're sitting for the exam in March, in June, in September, or December, the date of the exam is 1 July. All right, so for question 1, if now is 1 July, that means the year end is not over, because question 1 is a planning question. So year end cannot be over. Okay, what you need to watch out for here is see whether the results are projected. This is the word that you're looking for, projected. Okay, whether it's projected to 12 months, because last year's figure would be 12 months, we need to make sure that the current year figures are projected. There have been some questions in the past where the figures for this year is only up to 9 months or 8 months. So if 9 months is equal to 9,000 worth of revenue, let's say, keeping the figures very simple, then to gross it up, you will have to take 9,000 multiplied by 12 over 9. To get the grossed up figure. Okay, and this grossed up figure, this grossing up process here is only for the P&L. Only for the P&L. We do not gross up the balance sheet. Balance sheet is a snapshot, like a camera shot of a point in time, whereas the P&L is a period statement. So that's why we have to gross it up. So the reason why you have to gross it up is because if you don't, all your materiality calculations are going to be wrong. Your ratios are going to be wrong as well. All right, so please watch out for that. Okay, and when you're designing your audit procedures, Now, I know now is 1 July. Our year end is either 31 August or 30th September. You're designing the audit procedures for the final audit. All right, just keep that in mind. Question 1 is a planning question. Question 2, the year end is always over already. Now is 1 July. When is your year end? 31 March. Okay, so if you get an exam question that talks about audit procedures, it will be audit procedures that are found in the audit program. Whereas if it is a finalization procedure, finalization means all the work done already. This one is a planning question. Finalization means all the work's done. So if the examiner asks you for further action or further procedures, it is going to be these. These procedures will be the procedures that the manager will do at the time he's reviewing the file. Whereas these audit procedures are found in the audit program and they're to be carried out by the audit team. The middle column here are procedures that the manager will do by himself, and these are not found in the audit program. So you have to look at the scenario. So what are some of the things? Maybe inform management that we found something, inform those charged with governance, request management to make the necessary adjustments when they don't want to do the adjustments. And when they don't want to do the adjustments, obtain the written representations from management. Now, I just want to clarify something. Written representations, the letter of representation is found in ACCA 580. That written representation is more to do with audit evidence. Okay? This one is not ACCA 580. It's still called written representation, but we want something in black and white to prove that the client is stubborn and they don't want to put through the adjustment. That's this one. Okay, so this one doesn't come under 580. It's also called written representation, excuse me, but it is not audit evidence. This one is more protection for ourselves, so that at the AGM, when the shareholders ask you, why did you qualify the audit report? Excuse me. Why did you qualify the audit report? Then we can say, see, the letter they signed, they were adamant about not putting through the adjustment. All right. Audit file to be subject to a code review. Now, here we're not talking about the quality control kind of code review. Here we're talking about we have finished the audit. So sometimes the exam question, I know here it's called finalization, but sometimes based on the scenario, the audit is already over. If the audit is already over, then we can ask the file to be subject to a code review. Usually it's because we've done something wrong and we just want to get ready in case we get sued by the client. All right. Okay, question 3, we're really not sure what's coming out in question 3. Okay, so what have we done so far? Sleep is absolutely important. You must know the time management. You must practice according to the time. If you don't practice, it won't be natural that on the day of the exam, you're going to have trouble as well. All right, so at least within the next 7 days, please make sure that you practice time management. Dating convention, very important to know whether you're before the year end or after the year end, because the way that we respond in the exam question will be different. A planning question will be different from a finalization question. Next, let's have a look at the professional marks. Professional marks are actually part of easy marks, all right? Now, based on the examiner's report over a certain number of years, we managed to get clues as to how the professional marks are divided. The examiner says the professional marks are 4, but how do they divide it among the 4? You have got the title briefing notes, that will be half a mark. Then you've got the to from, the stuff that you copy paste from the email. Yeah. and that would be another half mark. So you need to know how to get the professional marks. Where are the professional marks? So that if you know that, you will be able to be deliberate in your answer. I've got a question here. There will be a compulsory question from other assignment. No, question 3, we really don't know where it's going to come from. It might be a non-audit assignment. It might be a quality control question. It might be a tender document question. Who knows? Anything can come inside here. It's open-ended. So if you had a question from the ACCA articles, it'll probably come out in one of these questions. All right. Now, I cannot guarantee that finalization will be question 2. It'll either be question 2 or 3. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So question 2 and 3 is talking about the section B questions. Yeah. Examiner has promised us that finalization will definitely be there for 25 marks, except that we don't know how it is going to appear. It could be any one of the 7 topics that we talked about. Then the balance of the syllabus would come out here. Okay, now the examiner also could take this one here and put it as part of question 3 as well. So finalization might be more than 25 marks. That's also possible. All right, so who knows? All right, so professional marks here again. Okay. Introduction. Keep it brief. So you can copy paste from the email. Just make sure that you clean it up a little bit. Don't just copy paste the whole of that email inside there and call it the introduction. The examiner is giving us 1 mark here. Okay, I've got a question here. Is prioritization increasing the professional marks to 5? Not yet. Okay, maybe next year, September. Okay, but not yet. Okay, so let me just clarify this. Okay, so professional marks are still 4. So for the introduction, you've got 1. So make sure that when you copy paste, clean it up a little bit. So these briefing notes include the evaluation of business risk, blah, blah, blah. Then you have got 1 mark for the headings and the subheadings within the document, meaning that headings, major headings like business risk, you've got big heading. Yeah. Audit risk, got a big heading. Audit procedure, big heading. And within the business risk, you have got little subheadings here. Yeah. On liquidity, perhaps. If you're dealing with audit risk, maybe one subheading could be management bias, another subheading could be revenue recognition, another subheading could be provision for damages, depending on the exam question, of course, right? And can you imagine there's 1 mark inside there? Don't lose that 1 mark. I mean, I tell you, if you've ever got marks at 49, you would really want that 1 mark, okay? So please do not despise the humble 1 mark. All right. Then you have got this thing called clarity marks. Okay, now how do you get clarity marks? Clarity marks is if you answer the question set, meaning that if the question is on business risk and you put down audit procedure, of course, there's no clarity there. Clarity has got nothing to do with English, okay? Clarity is whether you've answered the question set. So the thing here is this, if you make use of exam technique to answer your question 1. I've included, sorry, let's come back here. So I've got a question from Cassandra. Is the year end necessary? No, it is. You don't find it in the examiner's answer, but we do it at work, okay, in the audit firm, because it's always important to know when the year end is. You've got so many different clients, you've got so many different year ends. So when you copy paste that, that one will just take 10 seconds to do. But if you don't want to do it, it's okay. You can leave it out. All right. So on the area of clarity, the way to get a clarity mark is by having an exam technique for business risk, exam technique for audit risk, so that your answer is organized, clear. All right. Now, assuming you do not have an exam technique, that means you've been studying and you just write whatever that you want inside there. That means you don't have an exam technique. Then I would suggest that you put in your conclusion. So I asked Lisa Weaver this in May when they had the tutor conference. Yeah, I asked the question and I heard it with my own ears. And she said, I said, when you put down the marking scheme or in the examiner's report, you don't mention anything about conclusion, but when you publish your suggested answer, there's always that paragraph about the conclusion. So Are there marks for conclusion? She says, no, there are no marks for conclusion. She says, however, if your answer is not clear, then if you put a conclusion down, we will still give you the marks. That means she's swapping the clarity with the conclusion. Can you see that? All right. So if you have an exam technique and your answers to business risk and your audit risk are clear, organized, clear, then I would suggest that you don't waste time with the conclusion. No need conclusion. You will still get that 1 mark. All right. So previously, the examiner, if you look at the examiner's report, the examiner says most students manage to get these marks here. 3 marks inside here. All right. The one that they cannot get is this one. However, now there's good news. Even if you cannot get the 1 mark here, you can always get it through the prioritization of risks. All right. Now, how does the prioritization of risk comes about? This comes about because of ACCA 315 revised. All right. So here is the format that you have. These are headings. These are my headings, the business risk. So my headings are, I tell my students to make sure that it's big. You can make use of this. Can you see this paragraph here? This little red box here with the paragraph here. So you can change the size of the font and you can boldface it as well. So the headings are very, very clear. The reason why I want to do that is because there's 1 mark inside there and I'm going to put it down anyway. So I might as well just get my 1 mark for that. Yeah. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Yeah. Now, prioritization. So when you think about this prioritization of risk, we're thinking about ACCA 315 revised. And ACCA 315 revised says that we're looking for points relating to subjectivity, uncertainty, blah, blah, blah. All right. So if you're not sure about what the areas of significant risk are, these ones are all to do with the areas of significant risk. All right. Go and have a look at your ACCA 315 revised. I have a video on that in the YouTube channel as well, in my YouTube channel. All right. So let me show you how it works here. So with my students, I tell them that when they put down the part about the audit risk, make sure that your first point here is management bias, if relevant. If the client company is listed and if the results are going down, then management bias would come in. I mean, have a look at the scenarios, see whether there is an issue relating to management bias. Management bias means manipulation of financial statements. And what you need to do here is use the analytical procedures or your analytics to augment your answer to show that it's biased. So suddenly you find that your revenue has gone up by so much. Yeah. And then your PBT is going up even more than the revenue, then you need to be worried. Or if your business is going down and your revenue is going up, it doesn't make sense. Okay, so watch out for that. If it's a listed company, if your profits are going down, again, there could be manipulation, right? Then the next one I'm looking at is revenue recognition. Now, the reason why I put management bias first is because this is an area of significant risk. Susceptibility to bias. Yeah, management susceptibility to bias. Revenue recognition, the reason why I put it down as my second point is because of ACCA 240 on fraud, where the standard requires the auditor to presume that there is fraud in revenue recognition. Now, I'm not going to put this down all the time, but you need to look at the question to see whether there are issues. Maybe the question talks about a deposit or an advance payment made by the customer. Then you would put it down because the advance payment or the deposit will be treated as deferred income. Yeah. Or like in the crux question where you've got your cruises that, the cruises that go over the year-end date. Yeah. And in the crux question, they said that revenue is recognized on the first day of the cruise, and some of the cruises can last for 2 weeks. So of course, there's a revenue recognition issue. So put it down there because ACCA 240 says, presume that there's fraud in revenue recognition. Then after that, I'm going to put these 3 down. Now, these 3 are to do with materiality points. Okay. Okay, materiality. So it's still green. Yeah, it's still green. But these are points relating to materiality. So you're going to put all these points down in your answer anyway. But you know what? If you can just rearrange it to make sure that they are on top of your answer rather than at the bottom, you get 1 free mark. Now, when I mark my students' answers, okay, from the mock exam, all of them get 4/4. So this one they may not get, but this one definitely they get because they've already been trained to put down the points relating to materiality, management bias, revenue recognition right on top. So they always get 4/4 for this. So it's really good that we've got this thing called prioritization of risk. So getting 4/4 for your professional marks is going to be really easy. Yeah, please remember that. Yeah, so when you're planning your answer, take note of this one. I mean, they're going to be inside your answer anyway. Might as well just put it right on top. Yeah? Okay, so these are my headings, and then these are my subheadings. Yeah, and conclusion. You can have it if you feel that your answer is not so clear, but I do not emphasize that with my students because I make sure that they know the exam technique for answering these kinds of questions. So the answers will be clear, right? Okay, so are there any questions so far what we've done? You can just type in yes or no if you've. Are you guys there? Okay, so everybody's okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on. So professional marks here are also easy marks, but I want to look at some more easy marks. All right. And it is also linked to the exam technique. These two go together. So let's start with business risk. Now, I don't know who's going to get a business risk question. So we've got the scenario here. Open up the question. It's a business risk question, which is really fantastic. Okay. Question is, how do you find the points in the exhibits? Which are the points you're going to find? So the way to find the points is by thinking about or looking for what are the weaknesses that you can find. These weaknesses are all internal weaknesses. Stella is saying, for question 2 and 3, we don't have an introduction or conclusion. The introduction or conclusion is only for question 1 because that's where they give you the professional marks. There's no professional marks for question 2 or 3. Therefore, there's no intro and no conclusion, which is great. Okay. So for now, the professional marks are 4, but they are thinking about increasing it next year. So let's see what they do. Okay. Right. So find weaknesses in the scenario. Internal weaknesses, maybe weaknesses in relation to their value chain. Maybe they've got some transport problems or their labor problems or their raw material problems or whatever. Okay. If you look at ISA 315, they also talk about this, but they don't use the word weakness. They use the word condition. So these conditions are all internal conditions. You know how, let's say for someone is sick, yeah, someone is ill and you say he's in a bad condition. Yeah, or my car is in a bad condition, something like that. Yeah, the state that you are in is exactly the same as weaknesses. All right, this weaknesses is from the SWOT analysis, right? Then we have got another one, which is to do with the threats. These threats are always to do with external threats. So we've got the pastel factors here. ISA 315 calls it circumstances. Right? So we've got threats. It's too dark. Okay, threats, circumstances, pastel, they're all the same. Okay. ISA 315 goes one step further and says that there are certain events that happen to you. Events is something that happened to you. Circumstances happens to everybody. Event is something that happens to you. Maybe you had a fire. Maybe your workers went on strike. So that is an event that just happens to you. Okay, Gabriella is asking a question on prioritizing the risk. Does that mean that you prioritize within the scope of your answer for the whole scenario? Okay, when you're talking about prioritization of risk, we're talking about ISA 315. And when you're talking about 315, we're talking about this area here. That's where the prioritization comes in. For business risk, there's no prioritization. For business risk, you can put down all your business risk down, and the last point you put down will be liquidity. Don't put liquidity as the first one. It won't make sense. Liquidity will always be the last one because you have to see the net effect of everything that's happening. Liquidity will be right at the end. Okay. For audit risk, start off with management bias, if relevant. Revenue recognition, if relevant, and the rest of it will be anything that has got a high materiality calculation. All right, so just find it inside the answer. 5 points alone will not be enough for you because the marks can be 20 marks, so you need a lot more points inside there. All right, but just make sure that the first few are the biggies, the ones with the materiality calculation. The one without the materiality calculation, like for example, this is a first year audit. Initial engagement, and therefore the risk here is that the opening balances may be misstated. Consequently, the closing balances may also be misstated. There's only one mark inside there. Put that right at the end of your answer, not at the beginning. If you put that at the beginning, that is not called prioritization. Don't lose that 1 mark. 1 mark is so precious, you know. And I mean, if you're on 89, you get 1 more mark, you get 90. Maybe you get the world prize. Okay, something like that. I've got a question here. Yeah, new audit client, Lim Jia Jun. I've just answered your question. Yeah, so anything that has got 1 mark, like internal audit, corporate governance, new engagement, yeah, detection risk, put that all at the back. Anything with materiality calculation, put it right on top. Are we okay so far? Can I see some okays to see whether we're okay with the prioritization? Okay, excellent. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. All right. So we were on this one. How do you find the points? This is how you find the points. Okay. Now, question. Which of these that you find will you put inside your answer? Are you going to put all of them? Some of them? Can you put down in the chat? All of them? Some of them? Based on the marks? All of them? Okay, let me explain very, very carefully. Business risk is something that affects the survival of the business. Very good, Pinder. Yeah, survival of the business, which means that of these areas here, I will only put down those points which have got more than 60% likelihood of materializing. Those are the only ones which are going to affect the survival of the business. Why 60%? Where did I get that from? Well, if you look at risk management material, they're always talking about that 60% high likelihood, high impact, more than 60%. So we're not looking at anything that is below that because it won't affect the survival of the business. So question, in the scenario, how do you find the points? You have that. But in order to decide whether you're going to put it inside your answer, you need to go one step further and find proof from the scenario whether there is more than a 60% chance of this risk materializing. If you cannot find that proof, that means it's not an answer. Are we okay? So you've got to be careful. Find proof within the scenario that there is a likelihood of materializing, and if it materializes, the impact of them is going to destroy your company. Okay, we'll do a mini question in a bit. All right, so once you know that, now you're going to write your answer. So are we okay so far? How do you find the points in the scenario? Using this method. Okay, but which one of them are you going to put inside your answer? You have got to follow this. Otherwise, you won't get the marks. All right. Now, this one was taken from Redback Sports. Okay, so here, when you're talking about 60% chance of materializing, you will have to go to the exhibit that shows you the KPI. Because this is the only place that you can find information as to whether that risk is going to materialize or not. All right, now we're not going to do this question. It's just, we just don't have that kind of time to do it. All right, but I'm sure you've done Redback Sports before. Okay, now I'm not going to go through this. Okay, but I want to look at how do you write the answer now. Okay, so I'm using Redback Sports as a basis. So in order to write the answer, you will have a little subheading. Okay, you'll have a little subheading here, whatever it is. Then you are going to get half mark for your point that you found here. You know, this one here, but which has 60% chance of materializing. And then you're going to talk about the likelihood of it happening. And you're going to talk about the impact on the company. All right. So the first point, I want to show you how to get some easy marks inside here. The easy marks will be using analytical procedures. Now, what happened in the Redback Sports question was one of the points was the question started off by saying that the Redback Sports had to comply with health and safety regulations. You remember that? I'm sure you've done this question before. So in my answer, I'm going to put there health and safety. Okay. Now, how do you know what heading to put down? What you write on business risk. So I'm writing that now. Yeah. So what do you write on business risk? I'm going to start off with my observation. Observation is from the scenario. Yeah. These points here. Something here, maybe a weakness or a threat or an event that happened to you. Okay. Or the circumstances that you're facing, like in Redback Sports, they had to comply with a certain regulation. So I put a little heading down based on one of those little boxes there. Okay. I'm going to put down the story. So here, I'm going to say that Redback Sports. Oops. Hang on. Just change the color here. Now, I would suggest that if you're going to copy paste, be very frugal. That means don't copy paste too much. Why? I'm giving my own experience as a marker. Okay. I mean, I don't mark the external exams, but I'm talking about my own students when I mark their progress test and their mock exam. And marking is very, very stressful. And I want to make sure I read everything that they write so that I can give them the relevant points. But if you copy paste the whole paragraph and I'm reading here and I'm like, oh my goodness, this whole thing is copy pasted and you wasted so much of my time. And I get really upset. I mean, you got to remember that your marker is a human being after all, in case you have forgotten. They are human beings. They are married. They probably had a tiff with their husband or wife. Their kids are probably driving them up the wall. Yeah. And with the COVID lockdown, who knows what's happening? All right. So they are human beings. Remember that. So when they're marking your paper, make sure that it's a pleasant experience. So don't copy paste chunks of it, because if you copy paste chunks of it, I am duty bound to read everything here. And when I come to the end, I'm like, this fella has copy pasted everything and wasted so much of my time, and I get so frustrated. Okay, so when you're copying, make sure that the information has got value to your answer. All right. Now for business risk, you're going to get half mark for this observation. When you copy paste, business risk is the only question where you get half mark for identifying the relevant risks from the scenario. Okay. Now, inside the scenario here, there's more information. But when it says here, health and safety regulation, what could it be? We're not going to read the scenario. It's just too much time. So I'm saying that because they have got swimming pools, they've got scuba diving, they've got kids coming in there. So I'm saying that something like that. Yeah. So I'm saying that there's health and safety regulation, true, but now I'm trying to narrow down my regulation relating to the information within the scenario. And I'm saying that you have got a swimming pool, you've got kids coming in, and it is important to make sure that these people don't get hurt and they don't drown. Now, within the scenario itself, I've got further information under the KPI, the numbers that they're giving me. All right. And I'm going to say here that the number of centers have increased by 2. If you remember the scenario here, yeah, last year is 18. Yeah, last year is 18. This year is 20. And what does that mean? That means 2 increase, right? Are we okay? Can you say okay? I just need to make sure that you're with me. All okay. Good job. Okay, let's go down here. Now, if I listen carefully, if I put down the word 2, I'm not going to get any extra marks. But if you go back here and you see that the 18 minus 20 is equal to 2, 2 divided by 18 is equal to 11.1%, I straight away get half a mark for analytics. Okay, I get another half mark here. Oops, hang on, just give me a minute. Can you see that? Can you see how you can easily get half a mark by just converting that 2 into the percentage? No, you don't have to show how you did the calculation. The examiner would already have this information within the markers will already have this information, which is the 18 minus the 20 is equal to 2, and divided by 18 is equal to 11.1%. Half a mark. Now, for analytical procedures, you get 2 marks for business risk and 2 marks for audit risk. So might as well just make use of that. All right. And then I'm going to say, this one requires a little bit of calculation in the exam, and by about 12.2%. Remember, they gave us the information here about the number of members that they have here. Yeah. And the number of pay as you go. Now, I know inside this question, they had some unemployed people coming in, whatever, but that one takes a little bit time to calculate. So I'm saying here that the number of people that are coming in are expected to increase by 12.2%. Now, I will get another half mark for that, provided everything that I'm saying here is going to help me with the identification of the risk. If whatever that I'm calculating is not going to help me with the identification of the risk, I will not get any marks. All right. Now, based on this information here, you can see staff costs have increased by only 7%. Now, why did I suddenly think about staff costs? Because I'm saying here in my observation, you want me to show you the calculation for the 12.2? It's okay, let's go back here. So we can take this figure here. Yeah. And this is the number of members that you have. And apparently they visit the gym 3 times a week. So if you take the 38,000 multiplied by 52 weeks, all right, multiplied by 3 times a week, you'll get a figure. Add that with this figure here. Do the same thing on that side. 33,800 multiplied by 3 times a week, multiplied by 52 weeks. Add that to the 102,600. Yeah, you should get around 12%. The examiner will not penalize you because you've got limited time, and depending on whether you added in those people who are unemployed inside or not. So the examiner would understand. As long as your figures are close to 11%, the examiner would be okay with that. So here we're saying, talking about sufficiently trained staff. All right. So I'm saying here that by 7%. So 7% is also analytical procedures. And I would be able to get another half mark for bringing that in. Because now I'm bringing analytics in, not just absolute figures, analytics in. You know, earlier we were saying the number of centers increased by 2. Yeah, 2. So 2 looks very small. But when you convert it to a percentage, it comes out to 11.1, and everybody's like, oh, really? Can you see the effects of the analytics part of it? All right. Staff costs have increased by 7%. So here, when you're talking about the staff costs here, I'm relating it to this. Okay. Now, number of centers have increased by 11.1. Patrons have increased by 12.2%. That still doesn't tell me very much. But what if I tell you that approximately 800 patrons that would be a shocker. If you take the total number of people that are coming, you know, based on the calculation that I showed you just now, you do this calculation and you divide it by 365. We're not even counting the unemployed. We're not even counting the kids. There will be at least 800 people in one center per day. So you divide it by 365 days, then you divide it by 20 centers that they have. you get 800 people. Have you ever been to a gym where they've got 800 people inside? They're bound to lose people, lose customers that way. It would just be too busy. So I have got my half mark here for the story, and I've got 1.5 marks. I've got 1.5. I've got 1.5 marks here. The blue ones here, 1.5 inside here. Now let's go and explain the likelihood and the impact of it. That one, I'm also getting 1.5 marks. Now, if you take away all the blue items here, that would show you the normal marking scheme for business risk. Normal marking scheme is 2 marks for business risk, half mark for the story, and then 1.5 marks for explaining the likelihood and the impact. But here, I've managed to put in 3 items relating to analytical procedures to augment my story. So you can put it, doesn't matter whether you put it here or whether you put it under the likelihood or impact, it really doesn't matter as long as you've got it inside your answer. So I'm saying here, highly likely, because remember, we're thinking about more than 60%. Okay, highly likely. Now, for my students, I have advised them to, we don't have colors in the exam, okay? But I've advised them to write it this way, highly likely in capital letters, just to force them to think about the 60%. All right, highly likely that the gyms will be overcrowded. $600 people per day. You got swimming pools. Number of centers have increased. The patrons are not supposed to increase. The number of people, you've got 800, and staff costs only increased by 7%. So I'm starting off by saying that highly likely that the gyms are going to be overcrowded. So I'm saying that it's very highly likely that they're not going to pass this inspection. The question says that they have to comply. And not only that, the question also tells you that there's going to be inspections so that they can retain the operating license. But if their gyms are overcrowded, then it's very likely that they're not going to be able to pass that. Seriously. 800 patrons. Okay. So how do you get the number of patrons are the number of guests or customers that they have in a day? Okay. So all you have to do is take the total number of people that are expected. The total number of people expected is this figure here. This is the number of members. Multiply that by 3 because they're expected to come 3 times a week. So we want to look at the physical bodies that are coming to the centers. We're not just looking at the number of people who are registered. Every time you come to the center, you are considered to be a physical body. All right. So I may have a membership. That's me. Yeah, Sheila. But if I go 7 times a week, then my body will be there 7 times a week. So it is equal to 7 days, 7 man days. All right. So I want to calculate the number of bodies that will be appearing, not just the number of people. So this number of members here, 38, yes, the number of members are there. But if they come 3 times a week, then you have got to multiply that by 3 because their bodies will be appearing 3 times a week. And how many weeks are there in a year? 52 weeks in a year. So then multiply it by 52 again. Their bodies keep appearing all through the year. So I want to know how many bodies there are appearing. And the bodies are the ones that give rise to the overcrowding. So based on my calculation, there's about 800 bodies Of course, I'm not going to write the word bodies down here. People might think I'm talking about dead bodies. Okay, but there are 800 visits expected in a center per day. Can you imagine 800 people? Have you been to the gym? In your gym, how many people are there? In the gym that I go to, maybe there's about 30 people, but I haven't gone for 2 years now with the COVID thing. Yeah, but before that, it's about 30 people. I wouldn't want to go during a peak period. So if I did go, I would go early in the morning when it's sort of not so crowded. In the evenings, it's pretty crowded. So I wouldn't want to go there. But 800 people a day, can you imagine queuing up to go to the bathroom? Yeah, a nightmare. So highly likely, all right, that they're going to fail the inspection. So here, highly likely gyms will be overcrowded. Overcrowded gyms are unlikely to pass the inspection because the safety of patrons cannot be guaranteed. There's just not enough people to look after them. Then what I do here is I tell my students to put down the word impact. The reason why I use all these words in capital letters, of course, you don't have to use there's no colors in the exam. But the reason why I use all these capital letters is to make sure that my students don't forget to put down the point. Sometimes when you get excited and you are just writing, you forget what the marker is looking for. All right. David is saying, yeah, I can only see them in the first month of the new year. That's me, guilty. All right. Talking about going to the gym, it really requires some discipline, isn't it? Going to the gym every day, getting into your car and going into the gym, and then you park and then you go upstairs and then you come down and you're absolutely right. It really requires discipline. Okay, so what is the impact on the company here? The operating licenses, sorry. Okay, so that's my story on how it's going to affect the survival of the business. Okay, are we all right so far? So with my students, I want them to put this down in capital letters just to force them to think about it. Otherwise, you're going to be so happy just writing, and I'm not sure whether what you're writing will earn you the marks or not. Okay, so in order to save a little bit of time, you know, when it comes to business risk, sometimes the examiner might give you, let's say, 10 marks. Okay, how many points are you going to look for in this scenario? Can you type it into the chat? Business risk, 10 marks. How many points are you going to put in? That's right. It would be 5, right? Because you've got 5 points inside there multiplied by 2 is equal to 10. But writing out 5 points might be time consuming. What if I told you you can put down 4 points in the exam multiplied by 2, but you are going to add on points relating to analytical procedures? Won't you also get 10? What do you think? 10 marks would be 5 points because that's the marking scheme. There'll be 2 marks for each point that you put, provided you are going to talk about the highly likely that this is going to happen. Remember, the thing about 60% and you put down the impact, then yeah, you are going to get that 2 marks. But if you put down 4 points, but you augment your answer, strengthen your answer with analytics, you're still going to get the 10 marks and you can do it in much faster time. Think about it. So in the 7 days, practice that. See whether you can put down lesser points and augment it. Augment means strengthen it, consolidate your answer using analytics from the question. So when we're talking about analytics here, remember here we said number of centers have increased by 2. You won't get anything. But if you convert that to a percentage, straight away you're going to get half a mark. Are we okay? All right. Now, so you can save time doing this. Another thing that you can do to save time is this. You know, in the business risk question, we're going to have the heading. Then after that, you're going to put the story. Then after that, highly likely and impact, right? So I would suggest that if you know that you're going to put down 4 or 5 points, I would suggest that when you're preparing the framework of your answer, why don't you put highly likely, that, and then you can put down impact. Yeah. And based on the number of times, remember, copy paste. So we're going to control C, and then we're going to control V, and control V, and control V, and control V. And you've saved so much typing time by using the copy paste function. Yeah. Of course, if you can, at the end of the day, if you can only put down 3 points, and when you finish that, just delete those two. It's quite simple. Yeah. But make use of the copy paste function to save a little bit of time. Anything that can help you to save a little bit of time and be focused. Make use of analytics in your business risk. Make use of analytics in your audit risk as well. It will save you time. Try it out this week. Can I use point form or must be in full sentence? I mean, the important thing is clarity, isn't it? So I'm writing like this. This is how I write. I don't write like this. I really don't like writing like that. Okay, I'm just writing according to the way that I think. And here I'm not gonna put this down here like that. I'm just gonna keep it the way that I showed you. This is how my answers are in the exam. This is not point form. This is very clear. This is a professional answer. I'll get full marks for this. All right. So I don't like answers that are jumbled up. It's so difficult to mark. And the markers are marking at such high speed. Markers are not paid very much. In order for them to make it worth their time, the whole paper will have to be finished within 20 minutes. When I mark my students' paper, it literally takes me 1 hour, 20 minutes per paper. Okay, because I'm going through line by line, and then I'm also correcting them and telling them what they did wrong. And so I take much longer time, but your markers are doing it very fast. So if you put it like this, it's so clear to the marker, highly likely, impact, and you're forcing yourself to think in those terms as well. What do you think? You agree, disagree, try it out. Okay, all right. Now, let's have a look at, no, this one is not going to be uploaded anywhere. I don't think so. Okay, let's see what Bosco says. Maybe I'll upload it for 2 days. Okay, but please join the WhatsApp group so that I can be in touch with you. Okay, so those of you who don't know my number, you can always WhatsApp me at 6016-201-6114. Okay, all right. Now, on the area of liquidity problems. Okay, so you've got health and safety here. Let's look at liquidity problems. I'm just borrowing that so I don't have to type so much. Okay. I want to show you some things that we can do. Now, for liquidity, always put it as your final point. Okay. Okay, Rashid. Okay. No, it will be in the YouTube because some of you are not from my program. So if you've not registered with the program, then you will not be able to access the platform. Yeah. So, okay. So I'll tell Bosco to put it on YouTube for 2 days. No, YouTube. It'll make my life simpler. All right. Everyone has got access to YouTube yet, right? Okay. The reason why I don't want to record it and I don't want to give you the PDFs is because you would not be focused. I want you to focus now. That's the important thing. Yeah, we really don't have time for a review. get whatever that you need now, and then go on with your practicing the question, your time management, your marking scheme. That's what I want. Don't waste time reviewing this video. It's really pointless. Okay, but it will be in YouTube for maybe a couple of days. All right, so here I've got liquidity here. I'm just borrowing that. Okay. So I've already copy pasted all of that. Okay, on liquidity. So it's still on red back. So on liquidity, we're always talking about cash, right? Oops. 1.4 million. All right. Now, okay. Okay, quick question. For liquidity, I'm putting down the story. Liquidity is always to do with cash. How many marks do you think you will give me for this? Can you put it in the chat? We're just talking about the observation. 0. Oh my goodness. Have mercy. No. I'll get 1 mark, okay? Because I'm talking about the cash balance is projected to be 1.4 million. Of course, later on, I'll talk about how much is needed and all that, okay? So I will definitely get half mark for that. Now here, cash balance has reduced by 4.2 million from the previous year. How much will I get for that? That one is definitely 0. Can you change that to half a mark? Percentage, absolutely. So I'm going to say that cash balance has reduced by 75% from previous year. That will give me another half mark. All right, so make use of analytics for your advantage, to your advantage. Okay, 75% from the previous year. Because if I just show you in dollar value, you don't realize how severe it is. And when you see 75%, you're like, OMG, that's really huge. Okay. Now, when you talk about the cash balance, we're also talking about cash balance in relation to what we're going to use it for. And what are we going to use it for? Operating expenses. So I did the calculation here. How do you do this calculation here? So they've given you the operating margin here. Yeah, this is red back spot. They're giving you the margin here. So in order for me to know what is the operating expenses, I will take the 53 million multiplied by 85. Isn't it? Because the revenue minus of the operating expenses is equal to operating margin, right? Yes. Hello. Guys. Okay, good. Thank you, Jisha. Amy. All right. So once you get the operating expenses, all you have to do is divide it by 12. And if I divide it by 12, I will get the monthly operating expenses. That means I'm providing value-added information. That is analytics. Analytics is not just percentages. I'm providing value-added information. So monthly operating expenses are 3.75 million. Oops. 3.75 million. Okay, so all this is from the story that I have here. Now, for getting that 3.75 million, that is value-added information, I've got another half mark. But remember, earlier I've already put down 3. I've already got 3 here. That means there's only one more mark, one more half mark left. Huh? Remember, there's only 2 marks inside here. Okay. So here, instead of saying highly likely that this is not going to be enough, it is not a matter of highly likely, it's already not enough. Okay, so I'm just going to remove that and I'm going to say that this is already happening currently. Your cash balance is 1.4 million and your monthly operating expenses are 3.5. And we're not talking about highly likely in the future. I'm saying now itself, we don't have enough money. Okay, so what is the impact here? So if you remember in this scenario here, we don't have time to go into the actual question itself. Can you see your annual profit here is 6.9 million, right? And if you look at the staff costs, the marketing expenses is 8.5 million. How can the marketing expenses be more than the profit figure? Does it make sense? You don't have this kind of money to spend, you know. All right, it's ridiculous. So I'm saying here that without cash, census will have to close. And I'm keeping it very simple. Yeah. So I'm thinking about the likelihood, although at the moment it's already happening. And then you have got the impact. Without cash, census will have to close. Okay. Closed census do not generate revenue. Maybe I should add that in. So Redback will have to reconsider the way that they spend money on marketing because that's eating into the profit. Annual profit is projected to be 6.9, marketing is 8.5. So if cheaper ways of advertising are not found, they are definitely going to face cash flow difficulties. This is the part that relates to the survival. Are we okay with that so far? Yeah. Okay, so you need to try that out because if you don't use this method, chances are you're going to write too much and you are not going to be focused on business risk. Of course, if the same exam question comes out, then you will be able to do it because you've practiced it so many times. But the scenario that you're going to get in the exam is going to be something that's totally new, isn't it? Yeah. So in order to make sure that you don't end up writing too much, just think about the marking scheme. Think that half mark is for the observation from the scenario. If there's any analytics that you can add it on up to a maximum of 2, then put their highly likely impact, which we have already copy pasted like that. So it's very easy for you to start writing because when you copy paste it this way, it will force you to think along these lines. And if you cannot think along these lines, that means you're not thinking survival. If you're not thinking survival, then it's not a business risk answer. All right. Okay, so Isaac is asking a question here. Do you necessarily have to suggest solutions? No, we are not going to include solutions. But what I'm saying here that if they don't do something about it, they're going to die. All right. There are no marks given here for solutions here. But I'm saying that if they don't change the way that they're doing things, they're going to run out of cash. All right. Rashid, you're saying something about marketing expense. Oh, here. Yeah. So marketing, advertising, or cheaper ways of marketing, which is basically advertising as well. It's the same thing, right? Are not found. Yeah, question is not asking you for a recommendation, but I'm saying that if you don't, so maybe the question will say that your client's factory is made out of wood. And I'm saying that if they don't change that to something a little bit more solid, like brick or whatever, if they are doing any kind of welding work inside the factory, their building is going to burn down. Welding, fire, wood, not a good combination. Yeah. So I'm not asking you to put down the recommendation. I'm just saying that, if they don't do something about it, they're going to have problems. Now, speaking about that thing about the recommendation, okay, let's come back here. If you look at ACCA 315, okay, ACCA 315 uses this term here. Okay, let me just change the color of this. Okay. Okay, so ACCA 315 talks about these three things, but ACCA 315 also goes on to say conditions, circumstances, events. And there are two more words that I did not put down here. Yeah, actions and inactions. Okay, so you need to understand what I'm doing here. So I'm saying here, talking about redback just now, if they do not do anything about this, if they don't stop spending the money the way that they're doing at the moment, they will die. So I'm not providing you with a solution. I'm just saying that if they don't do anything about the current situation, can you see that? So if you look at ACCA 315, the definition of business risk, conditions, circumstances, events, actions, and inactions. So if they do not do anything to change that, they're going to have cash flow problems. So we're not providing a solution, but this falls in with the definition given in ACCA 315 of business risk. Are we okay so far? Yeah. So this one is saying if they do not act, they're going to be in trouble. Are we okay? All right. So just before we have a break, I want to have a break because I've been talking nonstop here. Okay. So we're still on redback spots. I've already done that just now. I copy pasted that just now. Just go down here. Okay. Just want to have a look at this one on the area of risks on mature misstatements. So in redback spots, part A was business risk, and the second part was risk of mature misstatement. Now, before I go on any further, are we okay with that part about question not asking for recommendation and why I put down the if? Are we okay with the action inaction part? Yeah, okay, good. So we're not providing with a solution. Yeah, but we're just following the definition of business risk given in ACCA 315. All right. Now, in redback sports, they also were planning on getting listed. Okay, so I've got ROMM is my heading inside here, my major heading. And inside there, I will have a subheading, and the subheading will be called management bias. All right, so now I'm coming to the audit risk ROMM part of it. We always start off with the story. Yeah. Listing is planned in 5 years. Okay. The question also says, I could copy paste that, but I'm just keeping it short here. The question says that these people are planning a listing in 5 years. Why? Well, it's an easier way to raise money, but expanding the business is going to help to make more money. And therefore, when you make more money, the listing is also going to be more feasible. Now, this one is just from the story here. The examiner is not going to give us any mark. The only time the examiner will give you a mark for the story will be in business risk. Okay. So the next part here is usually on the area of materiality, but are you talking about, Kumar, are you talking about business risk? Okay, so let's go back to business risk here. So that's why I've got this column inside here. Can you see the marks here? Yeah, the column inside here. So if let's say you put down 5 points inside here and you have already got your 10 marks and included inside there, you also put in your analytical procedures. Now you got 12, right? But the 10 would be the max. For this question for redback sports, maybe in another exam question, they will give you 12. Okay, so if the maximum marks there is 12, then you'll get the maximum marks of 12. But if you have already put down the 5 points plus the analytical procedures here, your marks will still be maxed at 10. Yeah, so generally for every point that you put down is 2 marks. When you add on the analytics, it is an add-on mark. It is not part of the 2 marks, it's an add-on mark. For business risk, there's a maximum of 2 marks given for analytics. For ROMM, there's a maximum of 2 marks for analytics as well. All right, so take advantage of that. Yeah, take advantage of that. So you can either do 5 points with 2 marks and you can add on the analytics because sometimes some of your points may not be so fantastic and therefore you still land at 10 marks. Or if you have practiced really well and you're very focused, you can put down 4 points multiplied by 2 marks plus the 2 marks for analytics will still give you 10 anyway. Have a look at your time. Yeah, but I would suggest that when you are doing business risk, think 4 points, think analytics. If after doing that, you find that you still have got more time, then by all means, put down 1 more point in case you are worried that one of the points that you put down here are not correct. But always keep a track of your time. All right. Okay. So now we're looking at management bias. Now, when you're dealing with the risk of material misstatement, I use an exam technique. Okay. For business risk, there's also an exam technique. What's the exam technique here? The exam technique here is called Audit. How does Audit come about? Audit is the observation, likelihood, impact. So if your answers are clear, you would get your clarity mark. Then you don't have to put down your conclusion. Yeah, and the marker knows that you are focused and you're answering the question set. Clarity marks is not for English. But of course, if your English is really bad, then the marker might have trouble understanding it. But your English can't be so bad. You're already on your final paper, right? Yeah. So I've got great hopes for you guys. Okay. So let's go down to risk of material misstatement. I just want to finish this. Oops, where am I? Okay. So the exam technique here is not Oli, it is Omari. Okay, this is based on the examiner's comments. Okay, so it's not something that's really odd or anything like that. So I always start off with the observation, what's happening in the scenario, materiality, the accounting treatment, if there is, then you've got the risk and the impact on the financial statements. Okay, so for management bias, of course, you will not have any materiality calculation inside here. Okay. So I'm saying here that management is under pressure to expand, to get listed. Okay, so I'm saying here, treatments like early recognition of revenue. Yeah, what else? Yeah, capitalization of expenses. Deferral of expenses means they don't put through accrual. Yeah, so they defer recognizing it, or they capitalize expenses like research or whatever that they want to. So this can lead to inappropriate accounting treatments. So we're saying that they are under pressure, and this can lead to this. I don't know what they're going to manipulate. Now we need to find proof that this is happening, because we're talking about the risk later on. We have to talk about the proof. So in the red bag question, %17.8%. Okay, so their revenue is already expected to increase by quite a bit. Oops. You don't have spell check in your exam. So I'm saying that members with annual subscription, because that's where they can manipulate. They've got two kinds of customers here. One is pay as you go, and the other one is annual subscription. Pay as you go, there's no way of manipulating it because revenue will be recognized when they pay. But with the annual subscription, if they pay the subscription in the middle of the year and you recognize the whole thing, then that would be wrong, because if you paid in the middle of the year, then only 6 months worth of revenue can be recognized this year, whereas another 6 months will have to go under deferred revenue, isn't it? So I'm saying here, so there's analytics here, and there's analytics here. Okay. And the shocking thing here is that, oops, so I'm providing you with proof that there could be manipulation. The number of customers are only going to increase by 12.4. How did your revenue increase by 17.8? And on top of that, your profit is going to increase by 50%. What did you do? Did you defer the expenses? Did you capitalize some of the expenses? How is it that your revenue can increase by 17.8% and your profit increase by 50%? Does that make sense? So I'm providing the proof here. So when I provide the proof here, okay, I have got 3 analytics inside here. So I will have oops. Let me just put that inside here. Can you see how the answer can get augmented? Yeah. So putting down that part here will give you this 1 mark. This can lead to inappropriate accounting treatments such as early recognition or whatever. Okay. Now let's come to this part. How are we going to get marks here? You've got to be very careful here. Students lose marks very easily. So I'm saying here that risk, that management. Okay. And here I'm going to say consequently, something is going to be overstated or understated. Now, if I was doing this in the exam, I would do a little bit of budgeting, and I know how many points I want to put down. And these are all repeat points that I'm going to put down. So if I'm going to put down 5 points on my risk or maturity statement, I will just copy paste that. Then I don't have to type that in. And it would also stop me from writing the wrong thing. So when it comes to this part, risk that management, okay, let's just take that out for a while. Huh? The danger is if I don't put that words down there, you know what students are going to say? Risk that revenue may be overstated and expenses understated. That's what they're going to do. If they do that, they will get that 1 mark here. And that's it. You're going to stop because there's nothing else for you to write. And you'll only get that 1 mark. But in order to make sure that you don't make that mistake, because the examiner's report says very clearly that the risk and the impact on the financial statements are totally different things, you're going to say, consequently, revenue may be overstated and expenses understated. So what is the risk? Risk that management. Now, the risk is you have to think, what is management going to do? So the risk is not the overstatement or the understatement. The risk is what management is going to do. Risk is not the impact. Now, if you go and look at the examiner's suggested answer in ACCA, sometimes they mix this up, but I don't want you to mix this up. Therefore, I've got this exam technique called OMARI, O-M-A-R-I. Keep the risk separate. So last time, I did not have this inside here. And I found that when I did not have that inside here, students would always take this and put this inside here. And then they lose 1 mark. Okay, but if you put this one here, there is no way your sentence can be risk that management Does that English look okay to you? It doesn't look okay, right? So you're not going to do that. And I don't want you to do that. So the risk is risk that management are going to end up doing something wrong as far as the accounting treatment is concerned, and the impact on the financial statement, that's the I. Consequently, then what is going to be overstated and what is going to be understated. Think about that. So risk that management okay, in the run up to listing. That's what management is going to do. And I'm going to get 1 mark for that. So if you do it this way, you are sure to get the maximum marks. If you don't bring in this word here, there is always that danger that you are going to put risk that revenue is going to be overstated, understated kind of a thing, and then you're going to lose out on that 1 mark. Don't lose out marks. Don't bleed marks. We need all the marks that we can get in the exam. So if you follow my exam technique, you will surely get the maximum marks. So how many marks would I get for management bias? Management bias is always 3 marks inside. Okay, but if you add on the analytics here, I get 1.5. So 3 marks plus 1.5 is 4.5. But remember, analytics is only maximum of 2 marks for audit risk, maximum of 2 marks for business risk. Is that okay?